There is one reason in particular, one reason above all else, why this tax should be reconsidered, and that reason is simple. Thank you to the founding sponsor of unDivided, 1530 Mortgage. Visit them at 1530mortgage.com. An unlikely alliance has formed against Washington state. The Republican governor of Alaska, Mike Dunleavy, and the Democratic governor of Oregon, Kate Brown, have joined together in opposition to a proposed tax under consideration in Washington state. Now, I'm not sure that there's much that the governors of Oregon and Alaska agree on, but it's pretty easy to see why their opposition to this tax is something that they can agree on. Democrats in Olympia are trying to fund a massive transportation package, and despite our state being on pretty good financial footing, they are, of course, never ones to pass up on an opportunity to pass a new tax. But it is an election year after all, so what if they could find a way to pass a new tax, but impose it on voters outside of Washington? That way they get all of the money, but none of the political ramifications. It's really quite brilliant. Enter the exported fuel tax. It's a proposal that would tax gasoline and diesel fuel produced in Washington state that is exported to Oregon, Alaska, and Idaho. Washington state would then use that tax revenue to fund a variety of transportation projects. So in a nutshell, the people of Oregon, Alaska, and Idaho would foot the bill for roads, transit, and bike trails, among other things, in our state. And our fine neighbors to the north, south, and east would foot that bill at the pump at a time when Americans everywhere are already dealing with high gas prices. On Twitter, Governor Dunleavy of Alaska urged his constituents to call Governor Inslee's office to voice their disapproval. Governor Brown of Oregon also tweeted around the same time as her counterpart in Alaska, writing, "I spoke with Governor Inslee today and made very clear that Washington taking unilateral action to increase gas prices for Oregon families and businesses is unacceptable." Now, you might ask me, Brandi, why should we really care about people in other states paying more for a product we provide them? Well, first, it's not as if they're getting the product for free right now. It's not like our oil refineries just ship it to them at no cost. So they are paying for it. This is about whether there should be an additional tax on it. But let's take a look at some of the justifications that Democratic lawmakers in Olympia are giving for this proposal. Representative Jake Fay is chair of the Washington House Transportation Committee. He said, "We bear the brunt for the environmental impacts that are created by having the refineries here in the state. In terms of fairness, I think it is only appropriate, since we produce the fuels for their use, that they support our climate activities and our overall activities in the package," the transportation package, that is. Meanwhile, Democratic State Representative Sharon Wiley, whose district borders Oregon, compared it to her constituents who work in Oregon but live in Washington. She said, "My people pay 10% Oregon income tax if they don't have a job on my side of the river." So fair is only fair, they argue, but they forget that turnabout is fair play too. Here's a lawmaker in Alaska reacting to Washington's tax proposal.
Washington feels like they can do this because they have refineries, and Oregon and Idaho don't, and Alaska has one small refinery. Meanwhile, they send their boats up here to take Alaska fish. So to that end, today I am in the process of putting forth two bills, one which will be a 6-cent per pound tax over the landing tax on fish that are landed in Alaska, and the other one would be a 6-cent per foot tax on any boat that moors or anchors in Alaska harbors.
You see, what's fair isn't always right, and there is something called being a good neighbor and understanding that as states we rely on one another. But there is one reason in particular, one reason above all else, why this tax should be reconsidered, and that reason is simple. We don't need the money. We don't need the money. I know it's hard for some politicians to wrap their minds around this, but just because you can pass a tax doesn't mean you have to. Revenue forecasts show that our state is in a pretty good spot financially right now, yet everyday people are still struggling. Now, whether those people who are struggling live here in Washington or are one of our neighbors in Idaho, Oregon, or Alaska, it doesn't really matter. I know this is a wild idea, but how about we stop coming up with new ways to take money from people when we don't need it? I want to take a minute to tell you about the founding sponsor of unDivided 1530 Mortgage. And what does it mean to be the founding sponsor? Well, it means that when I quit my job in corporate media and was panicking figuring out how I was going to make independent journalism work, 1530 Mortgage stood up and said, "We believe in what you're doing. We want to help." And they became the founding sponsor of unDivided. And I love working with them as a company. First of all, their mission is clear. 1530 Mortgage wants to get you into your dream home as quickly as possible. And that's what we all want, right? We want a company we can trust with one of the most important decisions that we're going to make in our lives. And also, I liked 1530 Mortgage because they believe in the mission of the show. They also support our men and women in uniform, which is very important to me. And they're very pet friendly. If you go to 1530mortgage.com, just take a look at what a central role that pets play in their idea of what it means to have a dream home. You know, it's more than just the house. It's all the things you love that are in the house that make it a home. And you guys know I have a slight obsession with our 2 dogs and our old, weird, wacko cat Edison. So I am so grateful to 1530 Mortgage for having my back, and I know that they'll be a great partner for you in your adventure to home ownership. If you want to see more videos like this, become an unDivided subscriber. You can do that in 2 ways. You can do it by becoming a contributor on my locals community, brandikruse.locals.com, or by joining me on Patreon. patreon.com/undivided. By doing so, not only are you helping to support independent journalism, but you are helping build a movement to give common sense a comeback.